When I first sat down to come up with the concept for this video, I didn't know if I could actually answer the question, should you buy the Komodo X or should you go with the OG Komodo 6K? And I honestly think I have a pretty good answer, but before I can give you that answer, it requires a little bit of context. See, it's very easy to sit down and look at these two cameras on paper and pretty much be able to size them up. I mean, honestly, that's exactly what I did. When I first heard about the Komodo X, I first ran to the spec sheet and started looking it over, and I was genuinely excited. I mean, the original Komodo could only shoot at 6K at up to 40 frames per second, and now the new one was giving us 6K at up to 80 frames per second. It also gave us 4K at up to 120 frames per second. On top of that, Red also told us that they were giving us a brand new sensor, not a reworked version of the previous sensor, a completely overhauled sensor, but still with the heart of a Komodo, which meant that we were keeping a global shutter when it came to this new sensor. It was going to be better in low light, and it was going to have a refreshed color science, taking a lot of the inspiration away from the V Raptor and bringing this over to the new Komodo X. On top of that, we were getting a completely new build. The body was going to be reminiscent of the original Komodo, but in its own ways completely new and unique, again borrowing some identity from the Red V Raptor. And so owning the Red V Raptor and also owning the OG Komodo, with the Komodo X seeming to sit right in the middle of the two of them, I was really interested to see how it compared to either of the two cameras, knowing that this was going to be the camera that people were going to be deciding between should they go with the Komodo X or the Red V Raptor, or would they go with the OG Komodo. And so I wanted to break down a couple of these features, show them off to you guys, show you guys some footage side by side, so that way you can truly determine for yourself which camera would be best. And at the end, I'll tell you really what my thoughts are, because honestly, I think a lot of creators are going to agree with the way I feel about these cameras. Now, starting off with just image, because let's face it, at the end of the day, that's what most of us creators care about the most. When you look at the image of these two cameras, just strictly from what you're getting out of the camera, you will immediately start to see some noticeable differences. One of the biggest ones I saw was in the actual color science and the way the images looked. Now, Red does allow you to film in R3D RAW across all of their cameras. However, it is something to note about how the actual colors are being captured to this brand new sensor. When you compare the original Komodo up to the new Komodo X, I do find that the X's images, especially when it comes to skin tones, do tend to lean closer to that of the Red V Raptor. And this is a actual very positive, notable change. See, with the original Komodo, this camera was designed to be more of a crash cam, and so color science wasn't as important, although yes, Red still wanted to do their very best with this, but this was not going to be a very face or skin tone focused camera. It was going to be very action oriented. Well, now that people have been using the Komodo as an A cam, the Komodo X gets a lot of the upgrades that we saw the Red V Raptor got when it came out. We get a better color science, we get better highlight roll off, and we get more attention to those skin tones. I also saw a massive increase in the overall quality when shooting in low light. Now, when you look at these two cameras side by side, and we got a couple shots of them side by side, I did notice that the Komodo X tended to do a fantastic job in low light, especially in situations where the original Komodo would get very noisy and very grainy. Now, that being said, the Komodo X still suffers from some of this noise. However, I've noticed that how they've tweaked the noise floor when it comes to the Komodo X, it just renders a cleaner shadow, especially in those low light situations, unlike the original Komodo that could tend to be very colorful and grainy in its shadows. Now, at first, when the original Komodo came out, the autofocus was in beta, and full transparency, the beta was not very good when the first autofocus system came out on the original Komodo. Now, over the course of the last couple years, Red has done numerous different updates to it, and I'm actually excited to say that for the first time, the Komodo, the original Komodo's autofocus is officially out of beta. And this was a pretty notable change that came after the Komodo X was officially released, because that's one thing I noticed on the Komodo X was the fact that this camera's autofocus did not say beta, and the autofocus was surprisingly good, like usably good, which completely caught me off guard. And the fact that now this new autofocus has been brought over to the OG Komodo, when I actually look at the autofocus tests side by side, I honestly feel like they both do a fairly good job and they're extremely snappy. Now, they don't offer any type of tracking functionality at this point on either one of the cameras. However, one thing that I did notice is that when you are using the autofocus with either one of these cameras, you do get a huge benefit from using the smallest box you can with the autofocus. Because one thing I'll say is that with both of them, regardless to which camera you use or really which autofocus settings you try to dial in, if there is an element of the background that falls within your autofocus box, well, the camera tends to want to focus at the furthest distance away from it. And so this could cause your autofocus to sort of jump or hunt back and forth. And so I would just typically say use the smallest box you can, and then instead of trying to put the box like maybe right on the face of your subject, maybe put it like around the chest area or the biggest mass of your subject, so that way you don't have to deal with the autofocus pulsing or moving back and forth if your subject happens to sway back and forth in frame. Now, the main reason why a lot of people will decide between these two cameras will have a lot to do with the actual image quality from them. However, I will say on record here on this channel that the image quality on both cameras are absolutely phenomenal. And so when you're looking at a difference of $4,000, I don't think that image is going to be enough of a reason for someone to pull the trigger and choose the Komodo X over the original Komodo. It will be a huge factor, but I don't think it'll be the main reason. Another main reason will have to be the use case of the camera. And this is where that totally new redesigned body is really going to come in handy for the Komodo X buyers. For example, the Komodo X now has a moved I/O array along with more I/O ports, but it also has a new V-Lock battery integration. And I know a lot of people out there are saying, well, what if I want to use gold mount? You could absolutely still buy the original Komodo, put adapters on the back of it and run gold mount. And Red has also said that they are going to be coming out with an adapter that will allow you to use gold lock batteries on this V-Lock system. However, if you are someone who runs V-Lock batteries, this is going to be a much easier solution than the original Komodo. In fact, if you actually took the original Komodo, attached a V-Lock adapter on the back of the BP battery array, and then put a V-mount battery on the back, that's actually bigger and heavier than the new Komodo X, which is kind of crazy to think about. On top of that, this camera also now uses CF Express Type B cards, which personally I find that they are faster, they're more reliable, and they're just easier to get your hands on. CF Express cards like the OG Komodo had, they were great during their time. However, the fact that these new cards are going to be a better buy long term, and if you ever do choose to upgrade to the V Raptor as well, you're using the same cards across both systems, it really does make the Komodo X's memory card solution, a better choice overall. Now, if we continue to work our way around the camera and we get to the front is fairly similar to the original Komodo. However, now you'll find that there is a secondary record button here, which has a cool little feature that I'll talk about here in a second, but it also has a locking RF mount, which is something that I wish the original Komodo had. See, the original Komodo, as I mentioned, is a crash cam, and whenever you're throwing lenses on a camera and you're flying it around, especially on things like a Bolt robot, or you're putting it on like an FPV drone, having your lens locked to the camera is actually super beneficial, because not only is it going to give you a more like established connection for your pins if you're running EF lenses for things like autofocus or for just getting metadata from the lens, but it also secures the mount, which means as the camera moves around really quickly, you don't have to worry about your mount really coming apart or starting to fatigue when you have that lock in place. So personally, I love the fact that my Raptor has it, and it's really cool that now this has been brought over to the Komodo X. Speaking of awesome features that are actually not on the Raptor, not on the OG Komodo, but that are uniquely a part of the Komodo X, and that is the record buttons. Now, I have not heard a lot of people talk about this, but Red has implemented a new feature on this camera specifically, and that is the fact that these record buttons, and I say these because I mean both of them, your front one and the one on the side of the camera, now have what are considered half press custom buttons. And so if you go into the settings on your Komodo X, you can actually establish what these half presses can do. And there is a long list of things that you can assign these buttons to. For example, I actually assigned my front record button as a half press in order to engage or disengage the pre-roll feature, which I use a lot when capturing sports and events like that. And I personally love this feature. I'm actually super jealous that this is a physical feature that can't be added to my Raptor or my OG Komodo. However, this is an amazing feature that they brought over to the Komodo X. And speaking of pre-roll, I absolutely love using pre-roll, especially on the Komodo, because whenever you are doing quick action or you're working in like live event situations where I tend to lean towards my Komodo X the most because of that global shutter, I love using pre-roll. And on the original Komodo, your pre-roll would last you about maybe 5 seconds or so, which basically meant that once you press your record button, it would give you the first 5 seconds before you press that record button in your actual shot. However, with the new Komodo X, that pre-record buffer has been increased to almost, I think it's over 15 seconds at this point, which is insane, especially for sports. Which means if you're like me and you're shooting baseball and you only want to capture the moment where the player actually hits the ball, instead of sitting there and just rolling and burning tons and tons of footage, you can sit there and just wait until the play actually happens. Upon the play happening, you can press the record button and you can know that you'll not only get that moment, but you'll also get the 15 seconds before, which means you really can't miss a shot. Another cool little extra bonus feature that they brought over to the Komodo X that's not on the original Komodo is some of its time-lapse capabilities. The Komodo X obviously has some built-in hardware that makes some of these time-lapse features a little bit unique, which means I don't think we're going to be seeing them on the original Komodo anytime soon, because quite honestly, under-cranking your shutter on a cinema camera is actually a super difficult engineering feat to actually pull off. However, I will say that the Komodo X gives you the ability to shoot at up to 1/8 of a shutter underneath the current beta. However, if you are using the monitor, there is the ability to go down to 1/6 of a shutter. And Jared has told me, Jared, CEO of Red, has told me that Red's actually going to be adding that to the settings here pretty soon. And so hopefully that means that Red will be able to continue to push the envelope when it comes to the overall under cranking of the shutter, especially for time lapses, because shooting time lapses is actually one of my favorite pastimes. I love capturing them, and having that natural motion blur in the actual time lapse itself looks really, really good. And so I am excited to see that that is something that was added to the Komodo X. Now, if you are someone who's interested in picking up the Komodo or the Komodo X, or maybe you already own it and you're just trying to get the most out of it, you're trying to learn how to truly use it, then I do strongly recommend that you go check out our new guide on the Komodo and Komodo X. This is something that I'm currently still working on. However, we've already released a few of the modules over on my training platform, the Creative Film Academy. That's my online platform where I teach about filmmaking, video production, and we just started adding with the Komodo X camera guides as well. Now, this entire thing is something that you can completely sign up for, but if you're already a part of our all access membership, then you already have access to this. So definitely check out the links down below and check that out, because we built this entire thing and we're going to continue to add new modules to this thing consistently as we basically get them finished and start pumping it out, because I want to help you guys fully unlock what you can do with the Komodo and the Komodo X. And we were able to build this entire thing online using today's video sponsor, Uscreen. With Uscreen, you can build your own online dedicated platform. This is very similar to like YouTube or to Netflix. However, it is your own. You can completely customize it however you like. And the thing I like the most about it is that you can choose to monetize it however you want as well. If you want to offer stuff for free or do one-time purchases per video, you can absolutely do that. But my favorite and the way that I personally run mine is through memberships. With memberships, you allow people to sign up on a monthly access plan, and then they can access any or all the content that you want them to be able to access. Personally, I've used it, as I mentioned, for the Creative Fam Academy, and I've used it as more of an educational platform. However, you can totally use it for entertainment as well. Like I said, building like your own Netflix style thing. And in keeping with tandem with Netflix, Uscreen can also help you build your own apps, which means your viewers can watch your content pretty much anywhere. Like for example, with my platform, we have Android apps and we also have iOS apps, but Uscreen can also help you to create Apple TV, Roku TV, and even Fire Stick TV apps as well. So this means that your viewers can literally watch your content anywhere whenever they want to. So if you're interested in building your own dedicated platform for your premium content, then I do strongly recommend that you check out Uscreen. I'll have them linked down below in the description. Now, I know I've been talking a lot about the Komodo X and all the new things that were added there, but there is still something to the value of the original Komodo. So with the idea of used Komodos on the market and the new Komodo X now been released, well, what should you buy? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, at the beginning of this entire process, didn't think there really was gonna be a very clear-cut answer. However, I now believe it's pretty straightforward. If you are someone who is thinking about buying a Komodo as your A camera, it's gonna be your main go-to cinema camera for all of your projects, then personally, I think you have to go with the Komodo X. It's such a fantastic upgrade compared to the original Komodo because of all of the new features that Red has added into it, its color science, its design, everything that's a part of the Komodo X package. It really is the go-to A camera if you are looking for a Komodo camera. I would not recommend spending your money on the Komodo original because you're going to look at that camera and think to yourself, man, I really wish I had X, Y, and Z, which honestly, all the things that we all wish were on the original Komodo is now here on the Komodo X. And so if you're someone who wants a Komodo X, but you only have the money for an original Komodo, then I would just recommend that you wait, save up a little bit more money and invest in a camera that's actually gonna take you way further. I mean, little things like the fact that the Komodo X actually works with the DSCM3 accessories like the monitor. I know it's like almost a $3,000 monitor, but trust me, when you use the Komodo X with this monitor, you're not gonna wanna use another monitor, but it's little things like that that really make this camera such a huge upgrade compared to the OG Komodo. And $4,000 over the course of 4 or 5 years, which is probably about the time frame that you'll have this camera for, you're really going to wish that you had made that upgrade. Honestly, at this point, the only people that I'm recommending to buy the OG Komodo are people who are either one, really planning on using this as more of a C camera for their Red package, or they actually plan on using it as a crash cam. So if you're someone who's gonna be putting it on an FPV drone or something like that, but even for those people, there are still a lot of benefits of going with the Komodo X. But the other people who I would recommend to get the original OG Komodo are people who can find an amazing deal on one. I mean, at this point, I have seen so many OG Komodos on the market for sale, body only, for like literally $3,000, $4,000, which is crazy prices because right now it's super competitive and some people are just trying to get rid of them. But man, those are deals that are kind of hard to pass up. And so if you're someone who wasn't planning on spending the money on an OG Komodo, let alone a Komodo X, you might want to look at some of the used ones right now because they're going for pretty inexpensive. Just obviously make sure that you don't get scammed in the process. I know a lot of you guys might be asking, should you skip the Komodo X and go straight to a Raptor? Honestly, I think if you have to ask that question, the answer is probably no for you for right now, but I'll kind of answer that maybe in a future video if you guys want me to. Leave comments down below, leave your questions. I'll be doing a Q&A over the Komodo X and the Revy Raptor and all things Red, all things video production. Really, it's an AMA. ask me anything. Leave your questions down below in the comment section and I'll catch you guys there. Thank you to everyone who has signed up for the Creative Fam Academy and who is supporting this channel by checking out the courses and the camera guides and everything else we have over there. Be sure to check those out, links down below as well. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.